find out they were coming through my hometown and traveling down through Kokomo, where I live now, and Indianapolis. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dave and Amy Freeman.
Well, thank you, Valerie. We're really excited to be here. Excited to be staying with the Gordons tonight, and thank you. There we go. That's better. Well, thanks so much for coming out tonight. We're really looking forward to sharing our story. My name is Dave. This is Amy, and we're on this pedal to DC. So we left Ely, Minnesota, right up on the Canadian border on April 20th, and we've been riding our bicycles, which are over here in the corner, towing this canoe behind you, and we're on our way to Washington. So we're about halfway through this journey. And people often ask us sort of how we're able to do this. And so I just want to start out by thanking some of our sponsors, because we wouldn't be able to do this without their help. The canoe that's back there, the bicycles, many of the other things that we need to do this journey were all donated by companies, so we really appreciate their support. We're doing this as a collaboration between Milkweed Editions, which is the publisher of our book, and also the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters, which is an organization that's working to protect the boundary waters from copper mines that are being proposed. And to start off with, we just want to show you a short video. It's about 2 minutes long, just to give you an idea of what this journey, this pedal to DC is all about. Water is about as important as any single element can get. The Boundary Waters has some of the cleanest water in the world. That's water and wilderness that belongs to all of us. Our nation's most popular wilderness is currently being threatened by a series of proposed copper mines. Generations of people before them have worked to protect these places, and now it's time for us to do the same. Pedal to DC is a bike book tour. We're going to be doing presentations all along our route to teach people about the Boundary Waters, to share our new book, A Year in the Wilderness, with them, and to get them to take action to protect the Boundary Waters.
In 2014, we paddled to Washington, D.C., and it was actually during that time that we realized, wow, we're kind of missing some major population centers by following a waterway and sticking to kind of a northern route. Our next thing was spending a year in the Boundary Waters. That was all about bearing witness to the place and sharing it with people, letting people live vicariously through us while we were in the place we wanted to protect.
In the fall, when our book came out, we traveled around by car and plane like most people do when they do a book tour, and we realized that just wasn't us. And so Pedal to DC is sort of a compromise. It's a way for us to be outside, but also be in urban areas so we can, share the wilderness with people.
We have about 30 stops planned. They're a combination of presentations at libraries and bookstores, but also breweries and bike shops and coffee shops. It's a pretty fun mix of people we'll get to meet all along the way.
If we don't all collectively take action to protect places like the Boundary Waters, they're not going to be here for future generations. And so right now, we have to be out getting people to take action.
Well, we're going to begin by describing Pedal to DC to you, and then kind of revert back to explaining what the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is, and the threat to it, and kind of why we've been involved in all of our various advocacy efforts. We call it adventure advocacy. But first off here, starting Pedal to DC, we left from Ely on April 20th, and you might notice a mound of snow here. There was a big snowstorm just a few days before we left. We were nervous that we wouldn't even be able to leave in time because of snow on the roads, but fortunately we had some sunny days before we took off. And this is how we travel. So my bike, I carry all of our stuff in panniers, and Dave is towing the canoe. You might notice here too, the canoe doesn't have many signatures. We've gained a lot of signatures since we started out. We've had people kind of spontaneously join us, bicycling with us along the way. So here we are along the north shore of Lake Superior, bicycling from Two Harbors, Minnesota into Duluth. And then of course we've been on our own for a lot of it too. And we try and find bike trails whenever possible. We're really excited to get off the road and experience bike trails. But we also will stick to quiet streets as well. And people often ask us, isn't it just such a big shift to go from spending a year in the wilderness to this bicycle journey where you're in so many urban areas and talking to people, and it is, you know, kind of a challenge for us to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. But at the same time, we've noticed similarities between bicycling and canoeing. They're both modes of travel where you're going slowly and you're outdoors and you're really steeped in nature as you're going along. So we notice things like frogs peeping and birds migrating. We saw sandhill cranes the other day. Actually, just today, a deer ran out in front of us. That was pretty wild. So there are similarities in bicycling and canoeing, and that really gives us a chance to recharge as we're traveling.
So this is what the Boundary Waters looks like from the air. And when we were in the wilderness for a year, we had 366 days where we didn't cross a road, we didn't go in a building, we didn't take a shower. We got an extra day because it was a leap year. And we visited over 500 named lakes, rivers, and streams in the wilderness during that year. But there were still over 300 that we didn't have the time or energy to visit, even in an entire year. So I think that helps you understand how vast the Boundary Waters is. It really is like half land and half water. How many of you have been to the Boundary Waters before? Okay, all right, so some of you have. Well, if you haven't been there yet, I hope that you'll go soon because it really is a special place. So here's where the Boundary Waters is located. So it's in northern Minnesota, north of Lake Superior, right on the Canadian border. And the Boundary Waters is shown here in purple. So this is a roadless wilderness area, no roads, no buildings, totally wild. And it's the largest wilderness area east of the Rocky Mountains and north of the Everglades. And in 1964, Congress passed the Wilderness Act. And we now have over 700 federally designated wildernesses in the country. 700. And every year since 1964, more people have visited the Boundary Waters than any of the 700 plus other wilderness areas in the country. It's the most popular every single year. And it's really a special place. It draws people from all across the country. And it's bordered to the north by the Quetico, another 1 million plus roadless acres in Canada. And then directly to the west, directly downstream, is Voyageurs National Park. So it's a really big, wild, roadless area. And the Boundary Waters is part of the Superior National Forest. So the Superior National Forest is 3 million acres. It's about 2% of our national forest system. But the Superior National Forest contains over 22% of all the fresh water in all of our national forests. So over 1/5 of all the water in all of our national forests is right here in the Superior National Forest. And this is water that's so clean you can just dip your cup right into the lakes and drink the water right out of the lake. It's an amazing place for fishing and swimming and canoeing and camping. And there's a Chilean mining company called Antofagasta that wants to build a copper mine right in the middle of the Superior National Forest, right on the edge of the boundary waters. So in this map, you can see this blue squiggly line. That is the watershed boundary. So any snow or rain that falls north of this line will flow north up to the Canadian border and through the wilderness area. Here's the town of Ely, Minnesota, a couple thousand people where we live. And this is where the copper mine is being proposed, right along the Quishue River and Birch Lake. And Amy and I have portaged our canoe, put our canoe over our head, and we've carried it from places where they're test drilling right into the wilderness, less than a quarter mile away into the nearest lakes. It's right on the edge. And any pollution from the mine, water pollution, could flow directly downstream right into the wilderness area through Fall Lake and Basswood Lake, this iconic fishing lake, and then on to the west through this big park in Ontario and the Boundary Waters and Voyageurs National Park. And in the summer of 2013, Amy and I learned about this proposed mine. There was this place called Sustainable Ely that was just opening in downtown Ely to educate people about this mine that was being proposed. And the more we learned, the more concerned we became. A mine of this type has never been built in a water-rich environment anywhere without causing significant ground or surface water pollution. And so to put one right on the edge of this giant wilderness area, our nation's most popular wilderness, right underneath and alongside these pristine lakes, it just didn't make sense to us. And so, our jobs and our way of life are really at risk because of this, because we work as dog sledding guides in the winter and canoeing and fishing guides in the summer. And we felt like we needed to figure out a way that we could help, that we could protect this place that is really central to our lives and important to so many people.
And it didn't take long for inspiration to strike. When we went inside Sustainable Ely, they had this canoe that people were signing to protect the boundary waters from this proposed copper mine. And we signed it, we thought it was cool, and we asked what the plan was for the canoe, and the volunteer there said, well, we're going to fill it with hundreds of signatures, and then we're going to put it on top of a car and drive it to Washington, D.C. And it didn't take us long, kind of mulling that over, to realize, canoes are meant to be paddled. And we have this skill set of, being pretty good at paddling canoes and kayaks and camping, and also sharing the adventure. So we thought that's how we could help. We could use our skills to highlight this issue and paddle this canoe to Washington, D.C. And we did that in the fall of 2014. So here we are, just taking off from the proposed mine site. So this picture was taken just downstream from there. This is on the South Quishue River. We followed the path of the water into the boundary waters, and then went through the boundary waters out to Lake Superior, put the canoe on our sailboat so we could fast forward Lake Superior and part of Lake Huron before we continued paddling and portaging on the traditional Voyageur route until we headed south into Lake Champlain and then eventually into the Hudson River and made our way to DC. So that journey took us about 100 days. So we arrived in DC in early December with our canoe full of signatures, and we felt really proud about the impact that we made. We had gained a lot of attention for this issue, and when we got to DC, About 40 people had flown out to meet us there, and then we all went around to meetings over the course of several days and started talking to senators and representatives and the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management about this proposed mine and the value of the Boundary Waters and why we need to protect it. But I think we were pretty naive when we started Paddle to DC. I think in the back of our minds we were hoping that when we got to Washington DC, the president would wave a magic wand and say, okay, the Boundary Waters is saved, there will not be a mine there. And that wasn't the case. We realized once we got there and started meeting with people that this issue would take a long time to solve, possibly even decades, and we wanted to do more.
So we decided that, well, maybe we could spend a whole year out in the Boundary Waters and use that as a way to continue to help people understand that, you know, the Boundary Waters belongs to all of us. Those of us that have visited the Boundary Waters, that our livelihoods are tied to the Boundary Waters, but also people all across the country, all citizens. These are public lands and waters that really belong to everyone. And we needed to try and help people understand what was at risk. Because copper mining is a really, unfortunately, it's a really dirty thing to do. Less than 1% of what they would pull out of the ground would be the copper and nickel and things that we want. So 99.4% would be waste rock. And in that waste rock, there's also a small amount of sulfide. It's just there, just like there's a small amount of copper. And when sulfide gets exposed to air and water, when it's dug up out of the ground, it produces sulfuric acid, battery acid. And then that battery acid leaches into the surface water and the groundwater, and it leaches heavy metals and toxins like mercury into the environment and causes all sorts of problems, both to the aquatic life, but also there's human health risks. There's a lot of really nasty things that happen, and so it's, to put a mine like this in this place, it just didn't seem to make sense. So we thought, well, maybe we can spend a whole year out there as a way to help people understand what's at risk. So I want to read a short quote from our book. This is the night before we were to enter the wilderness for a whole year. This is sort of what we were thinking about. It felt like our brains were buzzing with electric pulses of light when we closed our eyes and tried to clear our minds. We were too tired to think, but the endless stream of calculations and unanswered questions removed any hope of meaningful rest. 2 pounds of granola, 2 pounds of oatmeal, 1 pound of coffee, 1 box of chocolate cake mix, half a pound of powdered milk. Would this food last for the 2 weeks until our first resupply? How many bags of tea would we want? Was 6 pounds of trail mix enough? Would we get sick of rice and lentils or spaghetti as our only dinner option? What if we felt trapped and wanted to leave the wilderness after a month or 6 months? What if this extended Boundary Waters experiment started wearing on our relationship and forced us apart? What if one or both of us was counting the days, hours, and minutes until we could take a shower or return to the modern world? What if our cameras broke or we couldn't get the satellite terminal to work? What if people forgot about us? What if our goal of using this year as a tool to advocate for the protection of the Boundary Waters fell on deaf ears? More than anything, this last thought gripped our minds, making it exceedingly difficult to take advantage of our final night on a queen mattress layered with blankets and cozy flannel sheets.
So we entered the Boundary Waters for a whole year on September 23rd, 2015. And that was the fall equinox, in case anyone's wondering why we chose that date. And this is where we started, on Birch Lake, right here, And that picture I showed before, when we did our pedal to DC journey, it was just downstream of there a little bit. But in this case, we headed this way into the wilderness, and we took a meandering path all over. It was really freeing for us to realize that we didn't have to travel from point A to point B. That's what we had done for all of our other expeditions. And we had been limited by the seasons before. If it was a paddle journey, we had to get somewhere before freeze up. If we were dog sledding, we had to get somewhere before the ice broke up. But in this case, we just had a whole year to witness the Boundary Waters, to spend a year in 1.1 million acres of wilderness. And we learned to slow down during that time. So we visited 500 bodies of water and camped in over 100 different campsites throughout the wilderness. And we had this mission of sharing our experience with others. And that meant we had to carry some technology equipment that I hope you actually leave at home when you go on wilderness journeys. It was a little excessive. So cell phones don't work up there. Can't get a cell signal. And so we were using a satellite terminal to send our updates. So we were keeping a blog and updating social media, so Facebook and Instagram, and we had a podcast. And so we would take the time to send these updates. So here Dave is with the cell phone that's connected by Bluetooth to the satellite terminal. That's beaming up the information. And we're charging everything with a battery. But of course the battery is charged from the sun with these solar panels. So really the only thing normal in this picture would be Dave's bowl of oatmeal. So typical breakfast for us. But we actually came to look on this technology equipment as just another tool. It was like our axe or our saw that we carried with us. It was something that we would use for a finite period of time. You know, we wouldn't plug in and surf the web and watch cat videos on YouTube or something like that. You know, it was just this tool that we were using to send images so that others could live vicariously through us and keep the Boundary Waters on people's minds throughout the whole year. And we really fell into a routine. It's really my favorite thing to reach a point where we don't have to talk about who's doing what when it comes to setting up and tearing down camp. And we got so efficient at it that we hit this record, 20 seconds. But this relates to slowing down and taking the time to notice small things happening around us. When we were at our campsite in the late spring on Horseshoe Lake, we noticed a bunch of these creatures all around our campsite. They were dragonfly nymphs that had crawled out of the water, and they were latching onto vertical surfaces all around camp, so on rocks and tree trunks and even the side of our overturned canoe. And they were undergoing metamorphosis all around us, dozens of different places. So we took a time lapse of that. Imagine this taking place over the course of 2 to 3 hours. We got really excited about these dragonflies, thinking about how many mosquitoes and black flies they were going to eat once they flew away. So we were really rooting for them and just so excited to see one take flight for the first time. But most often it would just fly about 15 feet in the air and then get snapped up by a cedar waxwing. That's nature for you. I'm going to read a passage that relates to kind of noticing things like that with our other senses. We had paddled through wild rice beds countless times, but this was the first time we were able to isolate the scent, rich and grain-like. Our senses had become more sensitive over the course of the year. We had smelled algae on some lakes and could differentiate between the scents of cedar and pine. The perfumey smell of Labrador tea alerted us to the presence of a bog long before we caught sight of it. We had recognized the barnyard smell of moose and the musky scent of beaver. We could even smell the other canoeists we passed on portages or on the water, carrying the aromas of soap, sunscreen, and bug spray.
One of my favorite times to be out in the wilderness is early in the morning, as the sun's rising, because you often get these beautiful fog-covered lakes. I love watching the fog burn out. In the morning, the cold tips of our noses suggested that the temperature had dropped below freezing. Blades of grass glistened in the morning light for a fleeting moment before thawing. Fog ebbed and flowed across the smooth black water, and we sat in silence, not wanting the snap of a twig or the clank of a pot to break the spell. There is a primal enchantment aroused when you wake to a blanket of mist covering your temporary home deep in the wilderness. We often find ourselves fiddling with dials and switches, trying in vain to capture the moment with our cameras. But on this morning, we just soaked in the light, mist, water, and silence. Maybe it's best that the camera can't capture the cool, moist air, soothing trail-worn muscles, or the sound of swans skimming the treetops and disappearing into the fog. Moments like these fuel our souls and bring into focus the intangible values of the wilderness. This is the real world, wild, free, and untrammeled. We don't find it on our phones, computer screens, televisions, or radios. No matter how many times we surf the web or change the channel. We have to put all that noise away and make pilgrimages to wild places. We have to slow down, unplug, and just be. So this is actually our last campsite in the Boundary Waters. After 366 days, we were finally leaving. And when we prepared to enter the wilderness for a year, I think there was something in the back of our minds, wondering if we were going to be like, okay, 217 more days until we can take a shower. But in reality, as the time approached for us to leave the wilderness, we were far more nervous about leaving than we had been about entering. We had everything that we needed. We had clean water that we were just dipping our pots in and drinking right out of the lake. We had food that folks were bringing us every couple weeks. We had a very simple shelter, but it was all we needed. We had companionship, and we had this very strong sense of purpose. And I think the year out there really helped just all the extraneous things sort of slough away and really helped crystallize what was important. And we knew that when we left, that all those things were going to start infiltrating back into our lives, and we didn't want that. But we would be on a plane flying to Washington, D.C. 72 hours after we paddled out of the wilderness, and we had meetings and presentations and events scheduled for the next 2 months, and so there was no choice. We had to leave, but we didn't want to. And I want to just finish up by showing you a short film that we made. It's called Bear Witness. There aren't any bears in it, but we made it with 2 videographers that came in for 3 one-week periods throughout the year, and they took our footage and their footage and made this short film. We have cards at the back with the Save the Boundary Waters website on it, and if you go there, you can watch the film for free, so please consider sharing it with your friends.
Today, Northland explorers Dave and Amy Freeman set out on a year-long voyage through the Boundary Waters canoe
The
area.
couple embarked on this journey to raise awareness about what they believe would be the environmental dangers of copper-nickel mining in the area.
Their ultimate goal is to help educate others about the sulfide or copper mining that's planned in the Boundary Waters area.
Summer is ending. Light glistens on the frost coating the marsh grasses. Our time here begins.
Wilderness. It's a big word with a long history. As individuals, we struggled against it.
We tamed it, cut it, confined it to the periphery, to the boundaries of our civilization.
As a society, it fed us, all of us. And then we realized that what remained contained a different value.
If you have been here, you understand. The days are getting shorter. With it, the cold arrives.
This morning, ice rimmed the shore on the bay of our campsite. The lake steamed as it cooled in the 8-degree morning air. Gathering firewood becomes part of our daily routine. Life is not easy in the wilderness. We are kept busy from dawn to dusk. But our pace slows.
And we tune into the details. We sit at the water's edge, listening for the wolves. We tilt our heads back and howl. But they never howl back. Sled dogs are like people. They have their own unique personalities. Acorn is clearly the boss of our little pack. She is the mother of Tina and Tank.
She's 12 years old, but you never know it when you watch her run. Tina's really feisty, and she loves food. She starts howling and barking as soon as she hears the crinkle of the dog food bag.
Tank is a workhorse. He's twice the size of the girls.
He really shines when we get to steep hills or deep snow. The mercury hovered at minus 24 degrees Fahrenheit this morning when I stepped out of the tent. The ice was slow to form this year. The temperature is warmer than normal. Not today.
The blanket of snow lies unbroken, except for a few sinewy lines of tracks left by wolves and fox. Tina, Tank, and Acorn leaned into their harnesses. We glided silently across the white wilderness.
We near the wilderness boundary. Snow-covered rooftops dot the distant shore. After nearly 100 days in the wilderness, we talked about how we had no desire to walk up to one of those houses. This is where we belong.
There's no other place like it on Earth.
The lakes are perfect for traveling. I wish spring could last forever in the Boundary Waters.
We must drag the boat, moving across the ice as it melts. The days of paddling are right around the corner, but for now we must tread lightly. An unexpected swim could be catastrophic. We are never completely sure of our footing. There's a certain joy in that. We spin and laugh on the slippery surface as the sun sets. It's a perfect moment.
Shelter, warmth, food, companionship. These are all the things that we are searching for.
Wilderness makes these simple truths evident. There is wisdom in these waters.
We wrote a song with them about their mission and their expedition, and we finished it at the campfire on Snipe Lake in the Boundary Waters.
Wow.
It was really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah,
So they're spending a year in the Boundary Waters to bring attention to clean water issues.
and wrote a really cool song.
Standing proudly, we must speak loudly for this place, this quiet place.
The ice is gone. We travel by canoe and life is easy. Most of our tasks melted away with the end of spring. At times, the lake's smooth surface acts like a mirror, and it's hard to tell where the lake ends and the sky begins. In moments like this, it is clear. These wild places, these forests, these waters, they are our past and our present.
We see ourselves, what matters.
For they are a mirror. One that strips away clutter and reveals life's essence. Stillness, simplicity, friendship, love.
Time for a swim!
We have a habit of trampling these quiet things.
Silence, water, wilderness. I don't want to calculate or quantify them. Assigning a value seems a disservice. But they are too precious to risk.
This place, this water, belongs to all of us. and yet it belongs to none of us. These waters, this idea, it's bigger than any individual, ownership, right, or claim.
It's up to us to bear witness so that others too can listen.
It is up to us to speak loudly for this quiet place. Sincerely,
Dave and Amy Freeman.
So we left the wilderness and we were greeted by this huge flotilla of people. So if you've been to the Boundary Waters, you know that a group can't be any bigger than 9 people in any one place. And so we hadn't been around more than 7 other people in a long time. It was pretty wild for us. And in that flotilla of people, it was hard to collect our thoughts, but we did give a little speech out there, and I just want to share some thoughts from that. We are re-entering what some have called the real world, but we need to set the record straight on this concept. It is the other way around. We are re-entering a civilized world, a fast-paced world filled with cars, cell phones, airplanes, and indoor plumbing. But don't for one second think that this is what's real. When we exited the wilderness, we left the real world. The world where Mother Nature rules, where wolf packs roam freely, where wild rice grows, where mosquitoes hatch, where loon chicks ride on their parents' backs, where the sun rises and sets over forests and lakes that are untrammeled, where no sign of this civilized world exists.
So while we were in the wilderness, we started thinking about ways that we could share our experiences with more people, and we decided that one of the things we could do is try to write a book about it. And so we contacted some publishers, and one publisher actually decided that they would come into the wilderness to meet us. And so the sort of fancy guy that would normally wear a suit came paddling into the wilderness and had this meeting with us on our campsite about a month before we would leave the wilderness. And after leaving the wilderness, we agreed that we would publish our book with them, Smoky Editions. And so after we went to DC and had all these meetings, we came back to Ely, Minnesota, and we sort of settled down and we started writing. And we spent a year writing this book, A Year in the Wilderness. And it came out in September of 2017, a year after we exited the wilderness. And like most authors, we then went on a book tour and we drove all over the place and we flew all over the place and we shared our book. But we found that we didn't feel very good. We were like always inside and we weren't getting any exercise and we were eating lots of junk food and we thought, well, maybe there's another way to do this. Maybe we could do a bike tour, a book tour by bicycle. And so that's where this idea came about. And we thought, well, if we're going to do a book tour by bicycle, maybe we should tow a canoe behind our bicycle so that people can sign it to help protect the Boundary Waters. And then we thought, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well tow it all the way to Washington, D.C. So that brings us here today. Hope that you will also use our book as a tool to help spread the word about the Boundary Waters, this place that belongs to all of us. You know, I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but I know that the Grand Canyon is this iconic place that I really want to visit. I hope I can visit it someday. And I really think that, you know, places like the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and the Boundary Waters, these places belong to all of us, whether we visited them hundreds of times or whether we've only just heard about them. They still belong to us, and it's really important that when they're threatened, that we work to protect them, because generations of people have been doing this before us, and now it's just our time. And if we lose one fight like this copper mine, it will have ramifications that will last for generations. A mine of this type often causes pollution hundreds of years after it is built. Continuous water pollution, leaching heavy metals and toxins into the water. And so it's really critical right now in the next year that we all speak up and help protect this place. And there's a few things that we hope you'll help us do. Please consider signing the petition. You can do it at SaveTheBoundaryWaters.org. We have bookmarks at the back you can take that have that information on it. We also have an iPad, and you can just sign the petition right on the iPad. While you're here, that's the best way. And then also feel free to sign our canoe. The canoe is sort of a symbolic petition that we'll deliver to the head of the Forest Service. And then the iPad one is the real petition. Also, please contact your elected officials and folks that are running for office and ask them their stance on public lands, and also specifically on the Boundary Waters, and please tell them that this place is really a national treasure that needs to be protected. And then also help us celebrate the Boundary Waters. It turned 40 this year. The Boundary Waters Community Wilderness Act was passed in 1978, so I think most of us don't like celebrating our 40th birthday, but in this case, I think we can celebrate it for the whole year for the Boundary Waters. So thank you so much for coming. Just like to thank the Gordons for hosting us here in Rochester, and also the library for letting us come and present. But yeah, we'll be signing books afterwards if anyone wants to come and take a look. We're selling them. They're $35. There's over 100 full-color photos, and we can take cash or credit card. Well-behaved children sometimes, especially if they're good at bicycling. Okay, Lord Natalie, that's even better. And also, so we're going to be in Kokomo tomorrow night, and then we're going to be in Indianapolis. We have a presentation on Saturday in Indianapolis and also on Sunday. And all the information about where our presentations will be are available on SaveTheBoundaryWaters.org. So if you know anybody down there, please spread the word and let them know we're on our way. Any questions?
Who will make the ultimate decision to put a mine in?
Yeah.
What entity?
Sure. Yeah. So in this case, the surface is controlled by both the surface and the mineral rights are controlled by the federal government. The surface is primarily Superior National Forest, so the Forest Service, Department of Agriculture, and the subsurface, all the federal mineral rights east of the Mississippi River are controlled by the Bureau of Land Management, so the Department of the Interior. So right now, the reason that we're going to deliver the canoe to the head of the Forest Service is because in 2016, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management decided that they would not renew a series of mineral leases held by this Chilean mining company that were first issued over 40 years ago and had been expired. And they decided not to renew those leases, and they decided to do a 2-year pause and not allow any prospecting or anything to happen for 2 years so that they can do a 2-year study. And that study is going on right now. At the end of that study, which will end in January of 2019, the Department of the Interior and the Forest Service will determine if mining will be allowed on the edge of the wilderness, or whether they'll do a 20-year withdrawal from mining on the edge of the wilderness, which is what the Forest Service recommended in 2016. So basically, decisions that are going to be made soon, in the next year or two, will determine whether mining is allowed or not. And it'll be the Bureau of Land Management, Department of Interior, and the Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, that will make that decision. All right. Well, thanks so much, Logan.
I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing. This is fantastic.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'd also just like to add that it's important that we contact our elected officials, because when the Boundary Waters was formed in the late 70s, shortly after that, Congress passed a bill that withdrew the ability to mine in buffer zones along the edge of the wilderness. And that buffer zone covers about half of the wilderness area. But the southern border where this mine is being proposed was not included in that first buffer zone. So Congress has the power to be able to make a new buffer zone that would be permanent, just like a buffer zone already exists for a large portion of the wilderness. And so we're basically just asking, eventually we'll be asking Congress to do that. And so when that happens, it's going to be our representatives and senators from every state that are going to vote on this. And so that's why it's important now that we start contacting them and making them aware of this issue. Because, 5 or 10 years down the line, we're going to want their vote. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.